Diplomacy must remain at the forefront, and dialogue is the only path to restoring stability. We also stress that the European Union is present, the European Union is engaged and working closely with its partners in this part of its neighbourhood, committed to advancing our shared goals of stability, security and prosperity. This is a core pillar of the Cyprus Presidency of the Council of the European Union. In this context, we express solidarity with partners in the Gulf and Jordan. We commended Egypt's mediation efforts for a ceasefire. The Gulf countries have proven yet again that no matter the context, they are reliable partners to Europe. And let me underline in the clearest terms, their security is also Europe's security. Cyprus has and will remain the strongest advocate for the closest cooperation between the European Union and the GCC. We also commended President Aoun's resilient leadership and reaffirm our strong support for Lebanon and its sovereignty, stressing the importance of engagement between Lebanon and Israel. And we reiterate our commitment to support Syria's inclusive recovery. Dear friends, the evolving challenges we face are multiple and complex, and they are not confined within borders. They affect us all, and at the same time, they connect us. They require concrete cooperation and, above all, trust. And today's discussion proved two things: a shared understanding of risks and a shared willingness to act. During our discussion, we identified specific areas where our cooperation can be strengthened, and we agreed on concrete ways to address these challenges. To address these challenges together as partners for the benefit of our countries, our union, and our wider region. Because it is absolutely clear to all of us here, let me repeat it, that the security and stability of this region is interlinked with that of Europe's, that this is a vital neighbourhood, and it is the European Union's neighbourhood. And our union engaged in the world in a 360-degree manner. We have never been and never will be a single-issue European Union. In this context, we also discussed how to take forward our engagement with the southern neighbourhood. The Pact for the Mediterranean presented by the European Commission is a dynamic and greatly important tool, and its importance is now magnified by the developments in our region. From the outset, let me mention that Cyprus has supported the Pact as the most serious effort in 2 decades to reset the European Union's engagement with the southern neighbourhood. The Pact is not declaratory in nature, it is operational, and it delivers results and benefits. And that is why we are focusing on implementation through its action plan. Dear friends, I truly hope that today's meeting will be the beginning of a more consistent, more results-oriented dialogue between the European Union and its partners, a dialogue with clear and shared objective: a stronger European Union, hand in hand with a stronger, more stable region, and partnerships that deliver. Cyprus, my country, as the member state of the European Union in the region, at the crossroads of 3 continents, will continue to act as a bridge between the European Union and our wider region, a bridge that connects and delivers, always consistent with our role as an enabler of security and stability. Because crises and challenges pave a path for opportunities, and that is the path we're working today. Thank you very much.
President of the European Council, Mr. Antonio Costa, the floor is yours.
Dear Nikos, dear Ursula, Excellencies, President Aoun and President Ursula, first of all, it's a great pleasure to meet with you again after my recent visit with President von der Leyen to your countries in the beginning of the year. I would like to thank President Christodoulidis for hosting this important meeting at such a crucial time. The war in the Middle East has already had disastrous consequences for people, for infrastructure, and for the global economy. And with every day that passes without a solution, the situation is only getting worse. The current situation clearly underscores how closely Europe's security is linked with that of the Middle East, and how vital our cooperation on security and defence has become. That is why our exchange with all of you, Your Excellencies, was so timely and useful. To listen to you, to hear your assessment of the current situation, and to offer the support of the European Union. The European Union stands in full solidarity with your countries and your people. You can count on us. Since the beginning, we have consistently called for the de-escalation and negotiations in full respect of international law and international humanitarian law. The recent announcement of the prolongation of the ceasefire on Iran is a welcome step. Negotiations must continue with the objective to find the lasting solution to end this war and address the core concerns. And the Strait of Hormuz must immediately reopen without restrictions and without tolling, in full respect of international law and the principle of freedom of navigation. This is vital for the entire world. Diplomacy is the only sustainable way forward, and the European Union is ready to contribute to all ongoing efforts. This includes the nuclear file and help in restoring the Gulf energy infrastructure in order to stabilize the global energy markets. The situation in Lebanon, dear President, remains a grave concern for us. We hope that an extended ceasefire on the ground, and we call for diplomatic efforts to continue in full respect of international law and Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Hezbollah poses an existential threat for Lebanon, and it is a dangerous destabilizing factor for peace and security in the region. President Aoun, you have taken a truly historic decision to ban the military activities of Hezbollah. We will continue to support you and your authorities in your efforts to disarm Hezbollah. This is the only sustainable solution for restoring Lebanon's stability. It is encouraging to see that talks have started between Lebanon and Israel, and it is essential that they continue. And the European Union will keep on providing humanitarian and economic support to help you respond to the challenges you face. Our friends from Egypt and Jordan have also joined us today. They are our strategic partners, and their stability and security are key priorities for the European Union. I was also happy to meet again with President Ursula. The European Union acknowledges the important steps that you have taken to rebuild Syria. We support your efforts towards a peaceful and inclusive Syria. Finally, let me thank the Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council for joining us here today. This year, we will have our next European Union GCC summit. Now more than ever, we need to strengthen our ties. We are a reliable and predictable partner for all of you, today and in the future. We share your objective of building a prosperous, stable and peaceful future for the region, and we stand ready to contribute further. Many thanks.
We now give the floor to the President of the European Commission, Ms. Ursula von der Leyen.
Thank you very President Christodoulidis, dear Nikos, for hosting. Voila. Again, important that I thank you, dear Nikos, for hosting us here today, together with my friend Antonio Costa, President Aoun, President Al-Shara. We had a very good meeting. We welcome indeed the prolongation of the ceasefire between the United States and Iran and the ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel. Our shared goal is now to negotiate a lasting end to the war, and this includes restoring full and permanent freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz without tolls. It is equally clear that any peace agreement will have to address Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile program. The events of the last 7 weeks have shown the real danger that a nuclear Iran would pose to the world. My message today to our partners were two. First, I wanted to reaffirm our absolute solidarity with our partners in the region. A key lesson of the past weeks is that security is indivisible. You cannot have stability in the Middle East or the Gulf while Lebanon is in flames. So we call for the respect of Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity. A temporary pause is not enough. We need a permanent path to peace. And on the way, we will continue to support the Lebanese people. 6 EU humanitarian air bridge flights have delivered over 250 tons of aid as part of the €100 million in humanitarian assistance. This solidarity among partners is mutual. I want to praise the leadership of Egypt and Jordan. Both are leaving no stone unturned to find diplomatic solutions to conflicts that affect us all. And I want to thank the Gulf states for their support, for example, to bringing EU citizens home safely. Europe will remember this. My second message is that in times of crisis, bonds grow stronger, because we are not just partners in managing crisis, we are partners for the future. And this is why we held recently our first ever summits with Jordan and Egypt, and are reinforcing our strategic and comprehensive partnerships. We have big investment packages underpinning them, and I look forward to our first EU-Jordan investment conference later this year. Indeed, when President Costa and I were in Damascus in January this year, we announced a new political partnership with you, President Al-Shara, with Syria. Earlier this week, we have proposed resuming the EU-Syria cooperation agreement, and in 2 weeks, we will host the first high-level political dialogue between Syria and the European Union, paving the way for a possible future association agreement. We will keep supporting the revival of Syria's economy and the reconciliation of its society. Turning to the Gulf countries, last week the Secretary General of the GCC and I agreed that our partnership needs to become a broader geopolitical partnership. The EU-GCC summit later this year, I think, gives us the opportunity to do exactly this. We are also ready to team up with the Gulf countries to diversify export infrastructure away from solely the bottleneck of the Hormuz Strait. And now is the time to advance promising connectivity projects like IMEC, the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor. Finally, the events of the past month have taught us a hard truth. Our security is not just related, it is intrinsically linked. A threat to a merchant vessel in the Strait of Hormuz is a threat to a factory, for example, in Belgium. So today I propose that we move beyond reactive crisis management. First, we could consider expanding the scope of missions like Operation Aspides, evolving from mere protection to a sophisticated joint maritime coordination. Second, The threat of mass proliferation of drones and missiles is sadly a shared reality. We should set up a structural cooperation of scaling up defense production. So together, let us build a region where peace is not merely the absence of war, but the presence of a secure and prosperous future for all our citizens. Thank you very much.
President of the Lebanese Republic, Mr. Joseph Aoun, you now have the floor.
الرئيس صديق نيكوس، أود أولا أن أتوجه بالشكر إلى جمهورية قبرص على استضافتها لهذا اللقاء في هذا التوقيت البالغ الأهمية، وعلى الدور الذي تقوم به في هذه المرحلة الدقيقة في تعزيز الحوار بين أوروبا ودول المنطقة. كما أود أن أعرب عن تقديري لجميع القادة والشركاء على استمرار دعمهم ووقوفهم إلى جانب لبنان. لقد شكل هذا اللقاء فرصة مهمة لمناقشة التحديات المشتركة التي نواجهها اليوم في ظل تصاعد التوترات في المنطقة، والتأكيد على أهمية خفض التصعيد وتعزيز الاستقرار لإيجاد حل مستدام في منطقتنا، لما لذلك من تداعيات مباشرة على أمن الطاقة والاستقرار الاقتصادي وحركة التجارة وأمن الممرات البحرية. من جانبنا عرضنا خلال الاجتماعات واقع الوضع في لبنان، حيث يواجه بلدنا حربا متجددة جاءت في وقت لم يكن قد تعافى فيه بعد من أزمات متراكمة، مما أدى إلى تفاقم التحديات الإنسانية والاقتصادية بشكل كبير. اليوم يتحمل لبنان كلفة إنسانية كبيرة مع نزوح واسع وضغط غير مسبوق على البنى التحتية والخدمات، إلى جانب أضرار كبيرة في القطاعات الحيوية وتراجع في النشاط الاقتصادي. لكن في الوقت نفسه أكدنا أن لبنان لا ينظر إلى هذه المرحلة فقط من زاوية الأزمة، بل أيضا من زاوية الفرص التي يمكن أن تضيع إن لم نتحرك معا. فالمنطقة تمتلك إمكانات كبيرة للتكامل الاقتصادي ولتعزيز الترابط في مجالات الطاقة والتجارة والخدمات، وهي إمكانات لا يمكن تحقيقها في ظل عدم الاستقرار. وفي هذا السياق شددنا على أن استقرار لبنان هو جزء من استقرار المنطقة، لا يبقى محصورا ضمن حدوده، بل ينعكس على محيطه وعلى شركائه. كما أكدنا أهمية الانتقال من إدارة الأزمات إلى مرحلة التعافي من خلال تعزيز التعاون مع شركائنا الأوروبيين، ليس فقط في الدعم الإنساني بل أيضا في الاستثمار وإعادة الأعمار وتعزيز الترابط الاقتصادي في شرق المتوسط. لبنان مستعد لأن يكون جزءا من هذه المرحلة، ليس فقط كبلد يواجه تحديات بل كشريك في بناء الاستقرار وتعزيز النمو في المنطقة. نتطلع إلى البناء على هذا الحوار وتعزيز التعاون في المرحلة المقبلة بما يخدم مصالح شعوبنا المشتركة. شكرا.
President of the Syrian Arab Republic, Mr. Ahmed Al-Shara, the floor is yours.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أولا أقدر لكل زملائي الاتحاد الأوروبي دعوتنا لهذه المشاركة المهمة في هذا الوقت الحساس. يمثل اجتماعنا اليوم لحظة نضج سياسي واستراتيجي تكرس واقعا جيوسياسيا جديدا يتجاوز الأطر التقليدية للتعاون. نحن نقف على ضفة هذا المتوسط المشترك لنؤكد حقيقة راسخة، وهي أن أمن القارة الأوروبية واستقرار منطقتنا يمثلان توازنا جيوسياسيا لا يقبل التجزئة، ويفرض علينا العمل بروح الشراكة المتكافئة والمسؤولية الجماعية. ويتجلى ثقل هذه المسؤولية اليوم وسط التحديات القاسية التي تمس أمن مواطني المنطقة ومجتمعاتهم، وتضرب عصب التجارة العالمية، حيث يدخل إغلاق مضيق هرمز أو يشكل إغلاق مضيق هرمز مما خطرا كبيرا ما يضعنا أمام استحقاق تاريخي يفرض ابتكار بدائل استراتيجية من قلب منطقتنا. إننا نعلم اليوم أن أوروبا تحتاج إلى سوريا بقدر ما تحتاج سوريا إلى أوروبا، فالشراكة الأوروبية العربية المتوسطية غدت المسار الحتمي والملاذ الآمن لاستدامة تدفقات طاقة وضمان أمن الإمدادات العالمية. غير أنه لا يفوتني أن أضع المجتمع الدولي أمام مسؤولياته إزاء الانتهاكات الإسرائيلية المتواصلة بحق السيادة السورية من توغلات برية وغارات جوية وخروقات شبه يومية تطال أراضينا وأجوائنا في مخالفة صريحة لاتفاقية فض الاشتباك لعام 1974 ولأبسط قواعد القانون الدولي. إن هذه الاعتداءات لا تستهدف الأمن السوري فحسب، بل تستهدف في جوهرها مسار التعافي وإعادة الإعمار، وتضرب الاستقرار الإقليمي الذي يشكل الأساس الذي تقوم عليه شراكتنا مع الاتحاد الأوروبي. ولذلك فإن التزام شركائنا الأوروبيين بأمن سوريا واستقرارها يقتضي موقفا حازما يلزم إسرائيل بوقف اعتداءاته فورا، فحماية المسار الذي انطلق اليوم تبدأ من حماية الأرض التي ينهض عليها. ومن جانبنا فإننا نؤكد أن سوريا التي كانت ساحة لصراعات الآخرين تختار اليوم بإرادة شعبها ومؤسساتها أن تكون جسرا للأمان وركيزة أساسية للحل. الجغرافيا قدرنا والشراكة قرارنا. ومن هذا المنطلق نضع بتصرف شركائنا في المتوسط والخليج العربي مبادرة البحار الأربعة وممراتها التسعة لتمثل سوريا الشريان البديل والآمن الذي يربط آسيا الوسطى والخليج بقلب القارة الأوروبية. ختاما، إن ما أنجزناه اليوم هو البداية الواثقة التي تمهد الطريق لحدثنا الأكبر في بروكسل يوم 11 من أيار المقبل، حيث سندشن الحوار السياسي السوري الأوروبي رفيع المستوى. أمامنا 17 يوم من العمل المكثف نمضي فيها بعزيمة صلبة لترسيخ دور سوريا الشريك الاستراتيجي الذي يسهم في بناء مستقبل القارة الأوروبية وضمان استقرار منطقتنا. وشكرا لكم.
Your Excellencies, thank you very much. We conclude now the part of the statements. Thank you.
Thank you.
And dear members of the press, please remain seated. We will continue in a few moments with the final press conference for the informal meeting of the EU leaders which took place earlier.
Good afternoon. Let's now move to the press conference following the informal meeting of the European Council. I will not present our speakers, and I will immediately give the floor to President Costa.
Good afternoon. Take two. Thank you, President Christodoulidis, dear Nikos, for hosting this informal European Council yesterday in Ayanapa, and today in Lefkosia. Okay? Okay, yeah, perfect. Much better. Okay. I need to come more often. Today, Europe is facing a challenging security environment, one that requires Europe to have a 360-degree vision for sustainable peace and security, and to act upon it, be it in Ukraine or in the Middle East. Our meeting in Cyprus, in the current context, carries an important symbolism. It demonstrates the European Union's firm and unequivocal support to member states most affected by the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. For Cyprus, this situation is not an abstract issue. That is why it is so important to be here today, by your side, dear Nikos, and to send a clear message of European unity and solidarity. Cyprus is a vital anchor of cooperation and European engagement in the region. The security situation in the Middle East and the economic consequences it has on Europe and on European citizens were the main themes of our discussions. The recent ceasefires between the United States and Iran, Israel and Lebanon are welcome developments. Now all parties must engage in good faith to achieve a peace. The European Union is not part of the conflict, but we will be part of the solution. As we support diplomatic efforts towards reaching a negotiated solution to this conflict, our principles are clear. Real peace can only be achieved by defending international law in a consistent and principled way. Our priorities are equally clear. First, to restore freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Second, to work towards a stable and lasting ceasefire that could pave the way to sustainable peace in the region. Third, and finally, there cannot be a stable Middle East with a nuclear-armed Iran, and the European Union will continue to contribute to this objective as it has in the past. We met with leaders of Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, and the Gulf Cooperation Council. Our partners know they can count on us. We have been in intense contact with them. A few days after the start of the conflict in the Middle East, President von der Leyen and myself organized a video conference with all the leaders from the region to exchange on the situation and offer the support of the European Union. And just last week, I was in the Gulf to meet leaders from Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates and Qatar on the back of the High Representative's own visit. In parallel, under the leadership of France, together with the United Kingdom, a coalition of more than 50 countries is preparing a multilateral defensive mission to restore freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz when the necessary security conditions are met. During our meeting, we discussed the Union's readiness to respond to this challenging geopolitical and security environment. That includes defining more precisely how our mutual assistance clause can be used in practice. Yesterday, the High Representative updated us on ongoing work on this matter. The conflict in the Middle East is having a dire impact on the prices of fossil fuels, dragging down growth and directly affecting the lives of citizens and companies. In March, European leaders agreed on the need for measures to respond to this crisis, and the communication presented this week by President von der Leyen contains an important set of measures and recommendations. Coordination is key, and we are ready to step up our response. We will continue monitoring the situation very closely and adapt our approach accordingly. In the longer term, there is only one game in town for Europe: speeding up our energy transition and accelerating the deployment of homegrown clean energy sources. That is the only way to reduce dependencies and guarantee our energy security. This morning, we had an exchange on our next long-term budget, the so-called multi-annual financial framework. We have a collective responsibility to reach an agreement by the end of the year. Only this way can we make sure that the next MFF hits the ground running from the beginning of 2028, matching our ambitions with the necessary resources will be key. Our debate today confirms the new own resources will have to play an important role to fund the budget. There is still work to be done. The Commission's new own resource package proposal will continue to be the basis for this further work. And there was also openness to consider other proposals, namely put forward by the European Parliament. Our discussion provided important guidance for the next step. Good luck, Nikos. We will return to the MFF discussion in June on the basis of the first proposal with figures prepared by the Cypriot Presidency. So, to conclude, this is how Europe is responding to the challenging geopolitical environment. We are supporting Ukraine in its defense against Russian aggression. We are playing an active role in achieving lasting peace to the Middle East. We are protecting our citizens and companies from economic shocks. And we are preparing the ground for an ambitious long-term European Union budget. Thank you, dear Nikos, for your hospitality and for offering us this wonderful setting for our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to President Christodoulidis.
Dear Antonio, dear Ursula, dear friends, allow me to begin by noting that it is a moment of deep significance to welcome to Cyprus my colleagues from the 26 member states and, of course, the leadership of the European Union institutions. This is, in fact, the first time that Cyprus is hosting an informal meeting of the EU heads of state and government, and it is a moment of pride for my country, the same sense of pride and responsibility with which we have undertaken our institutional responsibility of the Presidency of the Council of the European Union. The informal meeting began yesterday in the partially occupied Famagustan district at Agia Napa, and today we stand together in Nicosia, in a European capital, the last divided in the European continent, that serves as a mirror for Europe's greatest challenges and at the same time of its most profound successes. It is actually this experience of living conditions of occupation that fuels our deep-rooted conviction in the European project and further European integration. And this is precisely what this moment calls for: more European integration and a more strategically autonomous, independent union. And this is at the heart of our presidency and encapsulated in our motto, a more autonomous union, open to the world. And this was the common theme underpinning our discussions last night and this morning. Last night, we began with an exchange with President Zelensky and underlined our steadfast support to Ukraine. We are very pleased that we have delivered on the 19 billion loan for Ukraine, a file that the Cyprus Presidency worked with urgency to implement following the December European Council. Support to Ukraine across the board is a key priority of our presidency because we stand in defense of international legality wherever it is violated, and Cyprus has a first-hand understanding of the devastating consequences of invasion and occupation. Last night, we continue our exchange with addressing the geopolitical developments following the war in Iran and the greater Middle East, and most importantly, how we, as a union, respond for de-escalation, for lasting peace, for safeguarding freedom of navigation. And in fact, developments in our region remind us that in an interconnected world, there is no such thing as a crisis that does not concern us. The disruption of maritime routes and of freedom of navigation in our region are economic shocks felt at every European household. And so, let me repeat it, I reject any narrative that disassociates Europe from these developments, because this is our neighbourhood. Dear friends, our discussion these 2 days highlighted and reinforced two core issues. First, this neighbourhood is vital for the European Union, and second, strategic autonomy in all its aspects is a necessary next step of European integration that we must give substance to. In this regard, energy features prominently in our discussions. On the one hand, in the immediate short term, how we tackle through specific measures energy prices as a result of the crisis in the region, and on the other hand, in the medium and long run, how we build up our energy union, which is a key component of our union's independence. Starting with the short-term measures on energy prices, we held a very productive discussion on the basis of the comprehensive and timely toolbox announced by the Commission, which the President of the Commission presented. And on the long run, for building up a true energy union, we work to accelerate our interconnectivity to effectively end our energy dependency. And in this context, the Cyprus Presidency is working diligently on the grids package. Hand in hand with this work and serving our overall goal for enhancing our competitiveness, because we can be more independent only if we can be more competitive. This morning I signed on behalf of the Council, together with the President of the Commission, the President of the Parliament, the One Market, One Europe roadmap presented by the Commission. This roadmap is comprehensive, has concrete timelines of delivery, and constitutes a strong signal of our collective determination to truly boost European competitiveness. And the Cyprus Presidency has acted with urgency and ambition on this agenda, and will continue tirelessly building consensus to advance a deeper, stronger single market. During our discussion, and in light of regional developments and the strong European solidarity in action to Cyprus, we all agree that our collective security cannot remain a dormant concept on paper. All of us agreed that when the sovereignty of one member state is threatened, the response is not a question of if, but how fast. Therefore, we cannot continue to rely, if you want, on ad hoc arrangements. We must formalise the mutual defence clause into a structured, operational mechanism, and be capable of transforming political statements into predictable action by operationalising Article 42.7 through a clear manual that ensures that the Union acts as a credible guarantor of security. And we know very well, dear friends, that we cannot fund the security and prosperity of the future with the tools of the past. To give true substance to our sovereignty, we must have the financial backbone to support it. Therefore, today, as Antonio mentioned, we focus on the financial equation of the next MFF, how to match our Union's growing ambitions with the appropriate level of resources. As Presidency, we are ready to do the difficult work. We have led significant groundwork, bringing positions around key issues. We have already tabled a targeted revision of the negotiating box addressing key issues, and this work provides a solid basis for the next phase of our negotiations. We will further accelerate and intensify our work in the coming weeks with the aim of presenting, yes, a negotiating box with figures at June European Council. Our objective is clear, and we will succeed to deliver a mature file to our Irish partners so as to move steadily towards a political agreement, as you very correctly mentioned, Antonio, by the end of 2026. Dear friends, the informal meeting began, dear friends, when Cyprus joined the European Union in 2004. It was the the most important milestone in our modern history following our independence in 1960. And today, as we host the first European Council in Cyprus, we do so with the conviction that a stronger, more autonomous, independent Europe is the only path forward. And that this union, yes, has the power, has the resilience, has the tools and the vision to make it a reality. And we have proven time and again that we transform challenge into opportunity. And exactly that is what this moment calls for. That is what we are going to deliver. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. President von der Leyen, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and also from my side, my dear Nikos, thank you very much for welcoming us here in Cyprus. You said your country is the bridge into the Mediterranean and the Middle East, and indeed we could see today that this is the place where the Middle East meets the European Union. So thank you very much also for that experience, and your presidency could not have been more timely than now. Antonio said rightly so, we discussed the impact of the crisis also on our economy, and here mainly the topic of energy. After 54 days now of conflict in the Middle East, the impact is tangible. Let me give you a figure. Since the beginning of this conflict, our bill for imported fossil fuels has increased by over 25 billion euros without a single molecule of energy in addition. 25 billion euros for 54 days, an increase of our bill. Therefore, the midterm strategy that we have been discussing in the last weeks and months is very clear. We need to reduce our over-dependency on imported fossil fuels, because these make us vulnerable to crises, and we need to boost our homegrown, affordable, clean energy sources. That is all sorts of renewables and, of course, as a baseload, nuclear. Both energy sources give us independence, they give us stability, they are produced here in the European Union, and they are cheaper. On the immediate measures that we proposed, I want to make, first of all, a general remark. The energy mix in every member state is different. And this is the reason why we have not presented something one size fits all, but a toolbox for the different situation in the different member states. First, support must be targeted to those who need it most. That is the lesson learned from the energy crisis in 2022. When Russia cut us off the gas. It must be temporary, so with a clear end date, and above all, it must be coordinated across Europe for maximum impact. Now we will apply the same mindset when it comes to fuel reserves, especially jet fuel and diesel, where markets are tightening. And the second lesson learned is that our immediate action should lead to lasting effects. So this goes back indeed to the fact, how are we going to change our energy supply over time? For that, you must know that the overall energy supply, 3/3 of the energy supply is fossil fuels. Electricity represents 25% of the energy supply, 1/4 of our final energy consumption. These 25% is lower than it is the case, for example, in the United States or in China. So this must and this will change. And that is why we will accelerate the electrification of our union. By the summer, we will present the Electrification Action Plan with an ambitious target, because the overall message of the day yesterday discussions was we must move towards clean and homegrown energy. This is not only a matter of affordability, but also of economic security and independence. Turning to our competitiveness agenda, indeed, this morning, the three of us, the Presidency of the Council, dear Nikos, the President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, and me as President of the European Commission, we signed the One Europe, One Market roadmap. Finally, it's agreed. It's excellent because it's a joint political vision for the completion of the single market by the end of 2027. As you said, with very clear milestones and targeted, very transparent, everybody can follow up. So there is also our collective pressure on speed to move forward with the implementation and the legislative processes. We have 5 key drivers of prosperity in this roadmap. The first is the simplifying rules to make it easier for companies to thrive in Europe. The second is removing all barriers that hamper smooth cross-border business and investment. The third element is that we champion strong trade, and we already have a strong track record here in free trade agreements. The fourth topic is what I just talked about, reducing energy prices and decarbonizing, as we just discussed. And the fifth element is driving the digital and AI transformation. So in many ways, signing this roadmap was hard work to get there, but this is not the end, but it's the start of even better and more and hard work to deliver. Finally, on the next MFF. Indeed, we discussed it this morning. The next EU budget is central also to our competitiveness agenda because it can de-risk investment and crowd in private capital. If you take InvestEU, InvestEU has or had 26 billion as guarantees. This triggered 300 billion of private investment. So this function of the EU budget is a very important one. By the budget, we can fund strategic priorities at real European scale, and it can support reforms that make Europe a better place to invest. All this is in the proposal of the next MFF, for the next MFF. But what we discussed today is that we must be very lucid about the budgetary equation, as we call it. First of all, from 2028 onwards, the European Union will start repaying Next Generation EU. That's one obligation. Then we need to invest more in our so-called new priorities. This is the European competitiveness, it is AI, it is quantum, defence, security, energy, you know the topics, the new priorities. The third point is that of importance that we want to sustain funding for the European Union's long-standing priorities. This is the common agriculture policy and cohesion. And of course, we want to keep the national contributions in check. If we want all 4 elements to be respected, then there's only one solution. New own resources are indispensable. We need new own resources. And that was the discussion that we had today. I presented the different elements of the package of the new own resources. Without them, the choice is stark. It's either higher national contributions or it's lower spending capacity. That's the only options that are out there. In other words, lower spending capacities would mean less Europe exactly when more Europe is needed. So this is why the Commission proposed a comprehensive package of new own resources, a package that is diversified, linked to the Union policies, capable of generating stable revenues over time. We think this is the only credible way to match Europe's priorities and Europe's means. And indeed, to conclude, Nikos, we began a discussion, timely and necessary, on the mutual defence clause. The treaty is very clear about the what, and it's very strong that there is an obligation of for other member states to support the one who is in need. The treaty is not clear about what happens when and who does what. And this is the topic we are working on intensively today, together with the, not only today, we have discussed it today, but we are working on that topic together with the High Representative and the Commissioner for Defence. We have a very good example with the Union Civil Protection Mechanism, since 20 years in place. Their member states know exactly how to trigger. everyone knows one's responsibilities and duties. A cascade is triggered, and it is working very effectively. There's a second element that we started to discuss, that is, what is the period before the mutual defense clause? So this period is the gray zone of hybrid attacks, of cyber attacks, of disinformation, of manipulation. And this is a very important period because this has to create the awareness with the member states that something is developing. And at best, it is a time where you can work to prevent an escalation to an armed conflict and to de-escalate. Also, this part of the equation we have been starting to discuss, but there's certainly a long way still to go to complete the picture. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now open the floor for questions, and I will start with you.
So let me ask in Greek, please. Κύριε Πρόεδρε, η Κύπρος πρόσφατα βίωσε τις συνέπειες της σύγκρουσης στη Μέση Ανατολή. Ωστόσο, είχε την ευλογία, θα έλεγα, να βιώσει επίσης και την ευρωπαϊκή αλληλεγγύη στην πράξη με τα μέσα και τη βοήθεια που είχε σταλεί από ευρωπαϊκές χώρες, σε μια περίοδο μάλιστα που η χώρα μας προεδρεύει του Συμβουλίου της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης. Οι εξελίξεις, ωστόσο, έφεραν, όπως είδαμε και στις δηλώσεις, στο προσκήνιο το άρθρο 42.7 της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης και τη ρήτρα αμοιβαίας συνδρομής. Είχαμε μια σημαντική χθες εξέλιξη όπου καλούνται πλέον τα κράτη-μέλη να θεσμοθετήσουν συγκεκριμένη διαδικασία ενεργοποίηση του συγκεκριμένου άρθρου. Αν μπορείτε να μας πείτε ποια είναι τα επόμενα βήματα, τα επόμενα πρακτικά βήματα και αν πιστεύετε ότι η συζήτηση που έχει ανοίξει σε σχέση με το άρθρο 42.7 θα αποτελέσει και μια παρακαταθήκη της Κυπριακής Προεδρίας.
I will reply also in Greek, if you don't mind, since the question is in Greek. Για την Κυπριακή Δημοκρατία και όχι μόνο, το θέμα είναι ξεκάθαρο. Το άρθρο 42,7 δεν μπορεί να μείνει θεωρητικό. Πρέπει να αποκτήσει ουσία, πρέπει να είναι πλήρως επιχειρησιακό και να είναι αξιόπιστο. Πολλές φορές και για λόγους αποτροπής ενδεχόμενης ανάγκης ενεργοποίησης του άρθρου. Ήδη, όπως ανέφερε πολύ εύστοχα η πρόεδρος της Επιτροπής, γίνεται δουλειά σε επίπεδο της Επιτροπής από την εκπρόσωπο, αλλά και από τον αρμόδιο επίτροπο. Εγώ να σας πω ότι σήμερα κράτη-μέλη από όλες τις γεωγραφικές περιοχές που καλύπτει η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση θα αποταθούμε προς την πρόεδρο της Επιτροπής θέλοντας συγκεκριμένες ιδέες σε σχέση με αυτό που προανέφερα, την ανάγκη να υπάρχουν συγκεκριμένα ένα επιχειρησιακό σχέδιο για το πώς λειτουργεί η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση. Υπάρχει ένα πολύ καλό προηγούμενο, ο μηχανισμός πολιτικής προστασίας που ανέφερε η πρόεδρος της Επιτροπής, στον οποίο μπορούμε να βασιστούμε για να προχωρήσουμε. Είναι σημαντικό και αν θέλετε είναι ενδεικτικό των εξελίξεων ότι βλέπουμε χώρες, και μου επιτρέπετε να το αναφέρω δημόσια, βλέπουμε χώρες οι οποίες είναι ισχυροί υποστηρικτές του ΝΑΤΟ, είναι στο σκληρό πυρήνα του ΝΑΤΟ, και αναφέρουμε στην Πολωνία, οι οποίες μιλούν για την ανάγκη να προχωρήσουμε δίνοντας ουσία και επιχειρησιακό πλάνο στο άρθρο 42,7. Σκεφτείτε, στην Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση υπάρχουν κάποια κράτη-μέλη που δεν είναι κράτη-μέλη του ΝΑΤΟ και πέραν αυτών των κρατών βλέπουμε και κράτη τα οποία είναι πολύ κοντά στο ΝΑΤΟ, είναι ισχυροί υποστηρικτές του ΝΑΤΟ, όπως η Πολωνία, να υποστηρίζει την ανάγκη η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση να προχωρήσει δίνοντας επιχειρησιακό σχεδιασμό στο συγκεκριμένο άρθρο. Γιατί δεν μπορούμε να μιλάμε για αυτονομία της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης αν σε αυτούς τους τομείς δεν έχουμε συγκεκριμένο σχεδιασμό για το πώς θα κινηθούμε. Άρα από δικής μας πλευράς, όπως προανέφερα ήδη με κάποια κράτη-μέλη, είμαστε σε επαφή από όλες τις γεωγραφικές περιοχές που καλύπτει η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση. Θα αποταθούμε στην πρόεδρο της Επιτροπής με πολύ συγκεκριμένες ιδέες.
Thank you. Next, Antonio.
No, thank you. Antonio Hermosín for the Spanish news agency EFE. Two questions, if I may. First one, several member states have advocated for a greater fiscal flexibility regarding investment in the green transition and energy grids. Based on the discussions at this summit, how would you assess the level of support among the member states for such exemptions? And is the Commission open to integrating these proposals into the current fiscal framework? And second, in the context of discussions on strategic autonomy and the mutual defense clause, there are new reports on the U.S. considering punitive measures against allies who decline to support the Middle East campaign, and more specifically regarding potential suspension of Spain's NATO membership. How concerning is this for the EU, and do you think this strengthens the case for accelerating European defence cooperation to reduce dependence on external partners? Thank you.
I start with the fiscal flexibility, you called it, I think. So first of all, yes, it is very important that we invest massively in energy infrastructure. We've spoken a lot about the energy sources, but I have not spoken enough about the fact that we need the grids, the interconnector, we need massive research and development in storing, so batteries, and the so-called flexibility that is artificial intelligence, managing that the energy flows best where it's needed most, and that the energy mix is optimal. This needs lots of investment. We have looked how much the current MFF has provided. If you look at Next Generation EU, the cohesion funds and the modernization fund, it's round about 300 billion euros that were available for energy investments. 95 billion of these are not used yet. So I called upon the member states to use these funds. This is very important to do that. Second, we have presented a grids package that works with all the topics that I've just spoken about, also the permitting process, that everything goes faster. We have presented this in December. The initial plan of the co-legislators was to be ready with this package at the end of this year. We have asked whether we can accelerate, and this is something the co-legislators are thinking about, to move this package forward so that we have the final decision on it earlier so that we can implement it, because it helps a lot with the investment in the infrastructure. Now, this is not directly only related to flexibility in the budget. If you're speaking about the general escape clause, this can only be activated in the case of severe economic downturn in the euro area or in the European Union as a whole. Thankfully, this is not the situation we are currently in. But we keep monitoring the developments very closely, and the ECOFIN will be discussing the matter in detail, so we are staying alerted. One element I should also add to that, we have just flexibilized the state aid framework also for these types of investments or support in the situation with energy scarcity and high energy prices too. So a whole mix that you see how to address the topic. And as I said, we keep monitoring the development very closely.
We have our headquarters in the same city than NATO, but we are an independent institution. We cooperate with NATO, but we don't discuss the internal issues of NATO. Then what we are doing, and what the High Representative updated the leaders yesterday, is about the ongoing process to discuss how to operate the mutual assistance clause. The mutual assistance clause is in the treaty, and as the President Christodoulidis explained, of course we need to know how to trigger, how to use this, and we are designing the handbook to how to use this mutual assistance clause. In fact, we have had in practice a first test here in Cyprus, when Cyprus was eaten by Hezbollah, immediately Greece, and then France, Italy, Spain, and Netherlands mobilized military equipment and forces to come to Cyprus to help Cyprus to defend from the external attacks.
Okay. Ansgar.
Thank you. Ansgar Hase, German press agency, DPA. A question to all of you. Yesterday, the German government offered to support an easing of EU sanctions against Iran if there is a comprehensive agreement that includes the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. So I would like to know what you think of this move. Do you think it's possible to have such an agreement with a regime that have killed tens of thousands of its own people? Thank you.
I start?
Yes. German.
Oh, well, then that's not fair. So, can I have first the Portuguese answer? No, we speak as one. We are both European. And indeed, as you said, Iran keeps attacking its neighbors and repressing its own people. So we believe that sanctions relief should be conditional on verification of de-escalation, particularly on progress on the international effort to contain its nuclear threat and on a change to the repression of its own people. You described elements of that. And that was the reason why we adopted the sanctions regime in the first place. The behavior of the regime, we should not forget 17,000 young people have been killed in the first month of this year. So the reason for that has to be ended before we can speak about lifting sanctions.
I fully agree. It's too early. We don't have a good experience with Iran. I remember last summer, some days before the snapback of the sanctions, I met with the President Pezeshkian in New York, and we tried at the last minute, until the last minute, to avoid the snapback of the sanctions. But unfortunately, Iran didn't deliver on what they need to deliver to ensure the international community that they don't never ever have a nuclear weapon. And we cannot ignore the nature of the regime, the violence of the regime against their people, and the thousands of people they killed very recently. Then I think it's too early to talk about relieve any kind of sanctions. But of course, we wish that the ceasefire could be last and open the space for diplomacy and from diplomacy to address the core issues. And the core issues are not only the nuclear issue. We need to address also the issue of the ballistic missiles, because this is a key element for the security in the region and also for Europe. And also they need to end the support of the proxies who are destabilizing the region and threatening also Europe.
So a regional reply. Without commenting on the issue of lifting the sanctions or no, but we cannot reach de-escalation in Iran, in the region, without the active participation of the European Union. And this is also, we want the message from the countries of the region. I'm not commenting on the sanctions, but I will say that as a European Union, we have the tools, we have the means in order to safeguard a permanent de-escalation.
Thank you. I will take one final question. Razia.
Thank you. Razia Akoch, AFP News Agency. Thank you. I have a question about Ukraine. There's been some comments by the German Chancellor who said there was no prospect of Ukraine's immediate accession to the EU, but suggested Kiev could join meetings of the bloc's members. Everyone agrees that, or at least perhaps privately and most publicly agree, that it's impossible for Ukraine to join the EU immediately. So I kind of wanted to understand what the path forward then would be. You know, what are the alternatives? Could you speak to what that would look like? And how long would it then take for Ukraine to reach full membership? Thank you.
May I? Yes. Okay. Not in German. Look, in the June 2022, we approved by unanimity to give the status of candidate country to Ukraine. And since then, Ukraine is working very hard with the European Commission in order to implement all the reforms they need to implement to ensure the accession to the European Union. All the member states know how difficult is a accession process. I don't know how many years Cyprus spent on this. I know my country spent 9 years negotiating this, the accession. And after this, with a lot of transitional clauses for a long time, then it's always very difficult. And of course, what is very, very, very impressive in all the assessments from the European Commission is to see how, in this such difficult situation, a country in war, suffering a war of aggression, is delivering on their capacity to make reforms. It's not the end of the process. It's a long process, a very hard one, but we cannot try to fix artificial moments to say is in the 3 months or is in 10 years. We need to work very hard and to continue to work very hard to deliver on this, and as soon as possible. And it's the same to Moldova, and it's the same to the 6 Western Balkans countries who are negotiating with us the accession process. And we will continue on this, because for us it's very clear that first, strictly from the economic point of view, it's important to enlarge our single market. The last moment of great growth in Europe was when, in 2004, several member states entered in the Union and enlarged our single market. But now it's also about geopolitical. And when I'm saying that it's about geopolitical, I'm not saying that we can give up on the criterion and the merit-based process, because this is a merit-based process. But what this means is everybody, the candidate countries and the European Union institutions, need to act with the sense of urgency of this process. And, of course, we need to be creative to solve problems. And it is not easy, as you can imagine, to negotiate nine accession process at the same time, and especially with a country with the dimension and in the current situation of Ukraine. But we believe in the future of Ukraine, and we believe that the future of Ukraine is in the European Union.
I can only echo that, because, it's very important. We have in 2020 renewed the methodology for the accession process. So this is also a set of clear rules among us and the potential candidate countries. And both sides rely on that, so it's a two-way contract if you are a candidate country. It's hard reforms that the candidate countries have to do. We expect them to only move forward if they deliver on these reforms. But the other way around is also true. If they deliver on the reforms, they have a certain right to move forward in the process. In the very end, it is a political decision by all member states, because by unanimity you have to then decide on accession. But the way forward, the merits-based process forward, has to be respected for both sides to know what to rely on. I want to say explicitly that Ukraine in the last months specifically has worked very, very hard and delivered through the rather important reforms to unlock, for example, European funding, and this has to this has to be rewarded on our side too.
The rather
Good enough for Zelensky, this?
Sorry?
Is this good enough for Zelensky?
If we discuss this with the President Zelensky,
Good enough for Zelensky.
what is good enough?
It's approach.
Ce que vous avez dit, c'est suffisant pour Zelensky parce qu'il veut plein. He wants full membership,
But of course he is.
but he wants it quickly.
But look, what we are doing is negotiate. All this accession process is towards the full accession of all these member states, these candidate members. That is, is an ongoing process, and we need to continue to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for attending this press conference. Have a good weekend.